message for this morning is Moses excluded entry into the promised land. And it's May the 17th, 2025. Moses excluded entry into the promised land. Now, you'd think a person like Moses, the meekest man on the face of the earth, was excluded entry into the promised land. We should think, why was Moses excluded from entering the promised land? He must have done something so serious, so grave, that God told him he cannot enter the promised land. And we're going to look at why and how. There's no sense in us studying things that have happened and don't see how it applies to us living at this critical stage in the history of the world. And we'll look through scripturally, and I'll give all the Bible verses that I can possibly do in the time we have to show why Moses could not enter the promised land. We'll start with Exodus chapter 17, and I'll read from verse 1 of Exodus chapter 17. Then all the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people contended with Moses and said, "Give us water that we may drink." So Moses said to them, "Why do you contend with me? Why do you tempt the Lord?" And the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why is it you have brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "What shall I do with this people? They are always ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel." So pay particular attention there. He's only taking some of the elders of the children of Israel. "And also take in your hand the rod with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. I'm emphasizing again that this was done only with Moses there and the elders of the children of Israel. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" The next passage I want us to look at now, in the light of making sure that we understand this whole issue of the rock. For that, I want us to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10. I'm going to read from verse 3 to verse 7 of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, from verses 3 to verse 7. All ate, talking the children of Israel, all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. So keep this in mind because of what we are going to be discussing in this message, that they all ate of the spiritual what? Drink. For they all drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Okay? But with most of them, God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now these things became our examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. What were these things there for? As our examples, as a type, as a shadow pointing to something greater. And do not become idolaters, as were some of them, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. With that in mind now, so what was the rock? Christ. Now we're going to Numbers 20. Numbers chapter 20. And we're going to look at from verse 1, Numbers 20. Numbers chapter 20, and we're starting with verse 1. Numbers chapter 20 from verse 1. Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation. What was in the Exodus passage? Only who was present? The elders. So Moses and the elders were present before the Lord. But here, there's a huge difference with all the elders present, and here now the whole congregation. Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Sin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no water for the congregation. So they gathered together against Moses and Aaron, and the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, if only we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into the wilderness? This is the whole congregation. That we, pardon me, and our animals should die here. And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink. So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield water. What you have to do this time? Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield water. What was the first time when they complained about the water? And what did God tell Moses to do? Strike the rock. That's it, once. Huge spiritual significance of what is all involved. Moses was told to strike that rock once. Here, he's told to speak to the rock. He's not to strike that rock. He's only to speak to the rock. Okay? Speak to the rock before their eyes, the whole congregation, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock. And who's the rock? Jesus Christ. So the thirst, when we thirst after what? Righteousness. When we thirst after God's agape love, when we thirst after God's character of agape, when we thirst for that life, righteousness, we are being filled. You shall bring water for them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. Now, pay very careful attention to what we're reading now. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, before Jesus Christ. The rock represents the person of Jesus. That was a type. And he said to them, hear, look at what Moses is saying. Hear now, you rebels. Hear you now, you whatever goes through your mind, you know. I mean, he's really what? So upset with the people And he states, "Hear you rebels, must what? Must we bring water for you out of the rock?" Wow. What's he saying? We are going to be the one that is going to do what? Bring water out of the rock. Then Moses lifted his hand, and what does he do? And struck the rock twice, not even once. Strikes the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and the animals drank. Now see what happens. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe me, to hallow me." To what? Hallow me. So what Moses did before the congregation, by losing it, by getting angry, and then striking the rock twice when he was told clearly just to speak to the rock, "Because you did not believe me," Moses and Aaron, "to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them." You are not going to take these children of Israel into the promised land, into Canaan. Now, what does this all apply to us? Paul in 1 Corinthians 10 said, these are all examples for us upon whom the end of the ages has come. The whole event applies to us upon whom the end of the ages has come. And we are living, believe me, as far as I am concerned. I don't know what your thoughts are. From all what I know scripturally, the day and the hour will not know, but through signs and everything else, the Bible is very clear that that day shall not overtake you as a thief in the night. We will know, but we will not know what? The day and the hour. But through the signs we will know, through everything that's given in the scriptures, we will know how close we are to the end. Now, let's look at what God has to say in this connection with Moses, particularly Moses. We're not going to deal with Aaron, because Moses represents and is a type of people at the end time that will be Christians, but will not do what we have just read. They will fail. They'll die. They're not going to experience the second coming. They'll not be translated. They will die, but they will be what? Resurrected. Moses represents the resurrection group at the end time. So I'm going to read to you from Deuteronomy chapter 1, verses 34 to verse 38. And the Lord heard, this is again in connection with Moses. And the Lord heard the sound of your words and was angry and took an oath, saying, surely not one of these men of this evil generation shall see the good land of which I swore to give to your fathers. So all the children of Israel that came out of Egypt, the original group, they all died. The new generation that were born, they entered the promised land except for I'll read it again. I swore to give to your fathers except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him and to his children I am giving the land on which he walked, because he wholly followed the Lord. The Lord was so angry with me, this is Moses talking, for your sakes, saying, even you, Moses, shall not go in there. Joshua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit the land. The next passage I want us to look at is chapter 3, verses 26 to verse 29. 26 to 29. But the Lord was angry with me, again Moses writing, the Lord was angry with me on your account What is he doing? He's saying on your account. He's taking no responsibility for what he did. Is he? Now, what do? We always find somebody else to blame. Anything goes wrong, anything is not right for us or doesn't go the way we want, and what do? Always. This is a fact. We always find somebody else to blame. We don't want to find and say, hey, the problem's with me. So here is Moses. But the Lord was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. Why? Because of you crazy rebels. You insane people. You caused me not to enter the promised land and taking no responsibility for it. So the Lord said to me, enough of that. Stop all of that trying to blame somebody else. Enough of that. Speak no more to me on this matter. See what God did? Stop blaming somebody else. Stop trying to say it's their fault that I'm not going into the promised land. Quit all of that. Take responsibility. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes towards the west, the north, the south, and the east. Behold it with your eyes, and you shall not cross over this Jordan, but command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over the people, go over before the people, and it shall cause them to inherit the land to which you see them. And then the final passage in this connection is Deuteronomy 34. And the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that we get clearly what is all involved in Moses not being able to enter the promised land. Okay? And we see why. Because he did what? He didn't speak to the rock. He struck the rock twice. And he was supposed to just speak to the rock because the rock was struck once already. Jesus Christ was struck once already. And that applies to what? The cross. We're going to see this. Okay? So here, 34, verses 1 to verse 7. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo. He goes up to the mountain, and we'll see what happens here. Okay? Moses goes up to the Mount of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the western sea, the south, and the plains of valley of Jericho, the city of the palm trees, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I'll give it to your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there on the land of Moab, according to the word of Aaron. Okay? So here, God said, Moses, you're not going to go to the promised land. And he goes up to the top of Mount Pisgah. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he, God, buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day. Pay particular attention to verse 7. Very important. Moses was 120 years old when he died. He was what? 120 years old when he died. And he was such a sick man. He was so sick. He had all kinds of infirmities and aches and pains and suffering with all kinds of sickness and disease. Is that what the Bible says? His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended. Moses what? According to what we have just read, he's 120 years old. He climbs up to Mount Nebo on his own. He's in a perfect health. But when he goes up on the mountain, what happens? He dies. Well, how did he die? How did he die? God told him, what you have done is wrong. Come up the mountain. And God killed him. God killed him. So how did he die? He's fit as a fiddle. The man is strong. And you know what we believe? What do we believe? God killed him. But who killed him? Who killed him? He didn't die naturally, dear ones, so don't say he died naturally. He didn't die naturally. This is so important for us to understand. People living at the end time. Moses is representing the people that will die and be resurrected. So if we don't get this truth in place, we're all going to die and be resurrected. We won't see the joy of the second coming. I'm serious. Those that won't have this wrong view and live a certain way and interpret the scriptures in a certain way, they, even though they are Christians and the followers of Jesus Christ, they will die and be resurrected. The group that will be translated will be exactly what Revelation 14 verses 1 to 5 gives. I'm not going there right now, okay? So here, we got this issue settled. Moses died and the devil killed him, because that's the devil's principle from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You do good, the devil rewards you. You do evil, the devil punishes you. That's the principle of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So he killed Moses there. And the reason that Moses could not enter the promised land, because he what? He did not honor God's character. He revealed to the congregation. This time the congregation is there. In front of the congregation, he loses it, strikes the rock twice, which is Jesus Christ, and defames totally the character of God. Why? Because Jesus dies what? Once. Jesus Christ died once, not multiple times. And there's a church in this world today, the biggest Christian denomination in the world. And what do? They crucify the Son of God every time they have their church service. Every time. So here, to make sure that we understand certain things properly, I want us to go to Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews 11. And I want us to look at verses 13 to 16 first. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 13 to 16. And what we're looking at in verses 13 to 16, what did the entrance into the promised land represent? That was a type, an example, a shadow of pointing to the heavenly domain. The entry into Canaan from Egypt, the wilderness, and through Egypt, letting go all of our Egyptian belief, all the pagan belief that we have attributed to God, dropping all of that, and to enter into the, in that time was the literal promised land. Here now, we are to enter into the spiritual promised land, which are to enter the heavenly domain. So verse 23 to 20, reading verse 13 to 16. These all died in faith, referring to all the Old Testament people, prophets, kings, Moses, all of them. These all died in faith, not having received the promises. They did not receive the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. They what? Seek a homeland. Not Canaan, not the earthly homeland. Declare plainly they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they came out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they declare a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, and He has prepared a city for them. What city? The New Jerusalem. Not the earthly Canaan anymore. Doesn't apply to the earthly Canaan. Next passage we want to look at, 23 to 29. Verses 23 to 29. And I'm going to read again. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. And keep in mind as you are reading this, this is now describing Moses. But Moses was not allowed to enter the promised land. And here this man is what is written about him. And this is in the New Testament. Refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he looked to the reward. By faith, by faith, Moses what? He forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith, verse 28. Verse 28. It's okay, John. That's fine. By faith, he kept the Passover. What did he do? By faith, Moses kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as to by dry ground, whereas the Egyptians attempting to do so were drowned. And I want to emphasize this. By faith, he kept the Passover. Okay? And we see how, and the sprinkling of blood, and how this applies to us living in the New Testament. I'm going to cut short and look at certain passages, okay? Look at verse 28. Pay particular attention to verse 28, because what we are discussing as far as the Lord's Supper is concerned, when we are discussing all of that, here, by faith, he kept the Passover. The Passover represents what? The death of Jesus Christ on the cross. So, in verses 39 and 40 of chapter 11, all these things, all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, what? Did not receive the promise. They didn't receive the promise. It's very clear. They did not receive the promise, but God providing something better for whom? For us. God providing something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. That's a huge statement concerning us. Us. They cannot receive the promise, dear ones. They cannot. Unless we fulfill our commission here. If we fulfill our commission here, Satan's head is crushed under our feet. Jesus has crushed Satan's head on the cross. Satan's head is crushed under our feet. And as his head is crushed under our feet, what has happened? He no longer can what? Deceive us. He no longer can fool us. And because of this happening, the promise can be fulfilled for all previous generation. I'm going to skip because of time. I want us now to look at Jesus, what Moses did, and how Jesus' death on the cross involves one event. So every time we, or the Catholic Church, or anybody else keeps promoting the ceremonial, the ritualistic bread and wine, we are doing what? We are striking that rock twice. And we're going to look at this. Let's go to Romans chapter 6. Romans chapter 6. And I'm going to read from verses 8 to verse 11. Romans chapter 6. Now, if we died with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Christ, having been raised from the dead, dies what? Once, no more. So every time this whole bread and wine that is being eaten on a daily basis all over the world, what are they doing? They're striking the rock twice. They're crucifying Jesus over and over and over again, dear ones. Death no longer has dominion over him. For the death that Jesus died, he died to sin once and for all. And Satan has done a number on the majority of the Christians in the world. They are still striking that rock twice. They're striking that rock twice. They're caught up with certain things, and that's what is happening. I'm skipping a lot of verses. I'm just going now to 1 Peter 3:18. I'm skipping a lot of verses. I hope that this will satisfy us. 1 Peter 3:18. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive by the Spirit. So keep this in mind. Extremely important. That's why only the Apostle Paul gave us such a clear, definitive understanding of the bread and wine. Eating Jesus' flesh and drinking his blood. Because Jesus himself said it. Eat my flesh and drink my blood. Why? Because there John gives us the most clear and definitive understanding of the whole bread and wine situation. It is Jesus' flesh and Jesus' blood. Again, majority of the Christians think that you are eating literally Jesus' flesh and literally Jesus' blood. They call that the doctrine of what? Transubstantiation. And that's a blatant lie. Because what you are doing, you are crucifying the Son of God over and over again. And we are not to do that. And my prayer for us in this church, that we will realize that some of the things that we take doctrinally, we may come to the realization, for us living at this critical stage in the history of the world, that we are feeding on the pure doctrine, and that doctrine is nothing else but the person of Jesus Christ. For I determined not to know anything among you, like Paul said, except Jesus Christ and Him crucified.